few days ago, I decided to finally try out overdress. I thought we had a reasonable number of cards that I could get a representative, vaguely opinion of how the game was going to feel. And how did it go? Well, in this video, basically, I'm just going to talk about it. So, before I get started, I think it's important that I give a couple of disclaimers. Just so you understand the perspective this is coming from. If you've seen my previous Vanguard videos, some of these will be familiar. The first one is I haven't played Vanguard since basically the start of G, so stuff that happened like since then that you might go, oh, this has already happened before, or oh, but what about such and such? I'm completely unaware of it. So there's that. Secondly, I have no interest in premium, so don't expect any premium discussion. Not that necessarily would be relevant here, but I won't tangent off into it. Thirdly, and this is one is new and fairly important, I think Bushiroad is genuinely one of, if not the worst trading card game companies on the planet. So understand that when it comes to giving them the benefit of the doubt for something, I'm more inclined to assume they'll just fuck it up. This is primarily based on past experience, and whilst it's entirely fair for you to turn around and say, okay, but things will be different now, new creator, new this, blah, 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 which is true, and actually a lot of the reason I'm giving them any benefit of the doubt at all, recently, certain things they've done, for example, promising all their Buddy Fight players that they would continue to support tournaments until June 30th, then holding a Springfest online before June 30th and not giving the Buddy Fight players a final tournament. Kind of scummy, kind of lying to your consumers. So, you know, the scumminess is certainly not out of the system. So, yeah, keep in mind that on the one hand, I'm very inclined to be very harsh on them and like not give them the benefit of the doubt. However, on the other hand, I've been very, very kind to Gate Ruler, given it a lot of benefit of the doubt for future potential. Now, unlike Bushiroad, they have yet to disappoint me. However, I don't think it's fair for me to give that much benefit of the doubt to Gate Ruler, so I will do my best to make allowances for Vanguard and things that, for example, suboptimal. I will, it's set 1, right? So don't expect me to I'm not going to shit on the game. If you want my TLDR, 2 minutes and 40 seconds into the video, here's my TLDR. Game's quite fun. It's pretty good. Also, the shirt's ironic. Let's get started with my actual thoughts then. So, I played Zorga, and I played against Bastion, so I played against Kita Sanctuary. And the first thing that I was surprised at was how long the games ran. It was, I would say, on average 6 turns. Which was really good, actually. There was a very solid game length. It felt like there was a lot of back and forth. It didn't feel one-sided, really, in any direction. And it felt like both decks were really able to sort of do their thing. Like, my deck was able to do what I wanted it to do, and it looked like Bastion was able to do what it wanted to do. So that was very good. And despite Bastion kind of having 2 triple rares, because the starter deck boss monsters are like triple rare quality with what we have at the moment, it felt very fair. So that's a very strong positive. Obviously, I haven't tried out everything, and there's still cards left. However, if every matchup is like about that level, that's very solid. Obviously, it's no Gate Ruler 50 deck meta at the start, but that's also very unreasonable expectation. 10 is totally sufficient. So that was. So first off, like, that was good. The ride deck is very, very important, very, very nice. I think the game would feel really terrible without the ride deck, so I'm glad it exists. Before I talk about triggers, let me talk about guarding. So it doesn't feel great. I'm going to be honest. It's okay. It just about gets the job done. I saw a lot of people telling me like, oh, you're going to feel like you're going to have to guard earlier and do this, that, the other. It's kind of bollocks. You guard when it's sensible to guard. Nothing has really changed from that perspective. Like, yes, the numbers are smaller earlier on, but also your hand is smaller, and the cards you're willing to ditch are, your hand is smaller, so you can't ditch as many cards, and you need more of them for like your actual setup. So, the guarding earlier thing is to an extent bollocks. But to an extent true. It's just, guarding feels very similar in principle to how it used to feel, but it definitely feels worse. However, it is set 1, and very clearly there is like no defensive major mechanics at the moment. There are a few cards left, but I think it's pretty unlikely we're going to see some crazy defensive stuff in this set. So I would imagine set 2 is going to see some strong defensive power creep, because if it's offensive power creep, that won't be great. Now, I'm going to give Bushiroad the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to assume it is defensive power creep, because if it's offensive power creep, I'm not really sure what the point is, because like it's already like stuff, you know, the guarding is very specifically like just about enough is how it feels, like just about enough. So you know, if it swings more one way, like if it swings more to offense before they buff the defense, or if they don't buff them simultaneously, we're gonna have some issues. So, but you know, again, set 1, by and large, pretty good. Let's talk about the triggers. So if you've spoken to me about this before, you'll know my position on overtriggers. I think they're a really bad game mechanic. I'm going to expand on that now, because I think people think that I think like the cards themselves are broken. Look, okay, I hate all the people who are like who didn't have a bad thing to say about gifts at the start of V, and then turned around and said gifts were broken at the end of V. I don't know what you're talking about, okay? Gifts are not the problem. Card design was the problem. That, like, in principle, Persona Ride is literally gifts but worse, right? In principle, in terms of what it does. However, of course, you at the moment you cannot spam Persona Ride, and I assume they're smart enough to look at what happened to V and realise that the card design decisions they made to allow you to spam gain those markers and massively outpace what was reasonable and what was really, you know, the design intent at the start is not smart. So, you know, I think when you compare gifts and you look at overtriggers, a lot of people are saying they're nowhere near as bad as gifts. No, they're way worse. They're just not a problem right now. Let me explain what I'm thinking. Well, let me explain, okay? There are like 4 outcomes from an overtrigger, okay? The first outcome is you just don't see it. Does that improve your gameplay experience? No, you haven't seen it. But that's true for any card, so I'm not going to give that too much credence, okay? The second one is you draw it. Does that improve your gameplay experience? It's just a big shield. It's kind of like getting an extra PG. It's like drawing a PG. So, like, not really. If anything, you'll feel bad because you drew your one of very powerful trigger. Because the next 2 things are what it could have done. So, you'll probably feel bad there, you know, most of the time. The third outcome is you damage check it. So, you'll heal, sure, and you'll probably end your opponent's turn. And that will feel reasonably good. However, if you look at what every single one of these additional effects is, you'll probably be kind of annoyed that you didn't drive check it, and also your opponent won't be having a great time because you'll just ended their turn. So if it's like first damage, first attack, oh, overtrigger, alright, cool, my turn. that's not very fun. And the fourth thing is if you drive it, oh cool, you probably just won the game. Unless your opponent hits their own overtrigger. When we look at, with the exception of the overtriggers in the start deck, because I think those are actually kind of good, but with the exception of those ones, you know, restanding your Vanguard, getting additional drives, you know, just a whole extra attack, with how impactful triggers are in this, well, more on that in a moment, is completely ridiculous. Or the Dark States one, where, like, imagine if you hit that first drive, like, like, if my opponent is playing Dark States and they hit that first, overtrigger on me in their first attack, it's handshake phase, man. Like, I'm not going to win. It doesn't matter. They're so far ahead. Like, and the reason for that is because of just how impactful triggers are right now. So, I think anyone who's saying overtriggers are fine, firstly, you know, if your justification is they're not that bad, it's probably not great. Secondly, I think they're a bad mechanic. I think they're a really bad mechanic that does not belong in competitive play, certainly. In casual play, sure, they're great. They're super fun if you don't care. Like, if you're having drinks with mates and you're just turning cards sideways, you're not thinking, they're fine, they're great. But when you're introducing this aspect into your competitive metagame, where it feels bad for at least one player, no matter how you see them, often it can feel bad for both players, that's not great. that being so you know, I think overtriggers are garbage. I think they're really bad, and I really hope that I would just hope that in tournaments they just go, you can't use overtriggers, because that would make me really happy, but that's never going to happen. I just want you to imagine yourself in a situation where you're in the finals, there is a free trip to Japan on the line, your opponent goes second, swings in, Dark States overtriggers you turn one, and that's it. You've lost your trip to Japan because your opponent hit the one-off. Like, that doesn't feel good, and no one will be like, whoa, very skillful, amazing gameplay. No, you'll be like, wow, I guess God just wanted this guy to win. Anyway, that's enough about the main set overtriggers. What I will say about starter deck overtriggers is they're really not that bad at all. They were actually quite fun. They weren't game breaking at all. Yes, they could still end the opponent's turn, but they could still end turns. But like, frankly, the difference between the 100 million power, whatever it is, or 100,000 power, and the 10,000 power you get from a normal trigger was actually not that big. Because like, and here's my biggest issue with the game at the moment. Triggers being 10k really is ridiculous. One defensive kind of neuters your opponent's ability to deal any kind of damage, apply any kind of pressure. You know, you're constructing these columns based on knocking 2 cards out of your opponent's hand or 4 cards out of your opponent's hand, and they hit one defensive, and suddenly you're knocking 1 card, if that, or you're removing an interceptor. It's like a lot worse. And equally, on a turn play perspective, hitting 1 plus 10k is devastating if you don't hit a defensive to counteract it, because that's an extra 2 cards you need to guard for every single attack. So triggers feel really, really impactful, and I don't really like that. I wish they were 5k. I don't like. I know it sounds like I hate RNG. I don't hate RNG. I think the way triggers are done in Gate Ruler is by and large really, really quite good. And I think Vanguard has potential to be close to as good. Definitely not as good, because, you know, I mean, it's not fair. These things are 10 years old. You can't expect the systems to be as good. But I think there's potential for them to be fun. And I think in Premium they are fun because you don't really care. Like, if I draw them, fine. If I hit them, it's usually not that big a deal. Because, like, the way that format works, it's like you can kind of always guard it, so it's not like a massive deal. It's not massively swinging. But here, triggers like are a big deal, and it was the same problem in V. And I hope they've learned their lesson. And my hope is that Set 2 is going to start solving a lot of these issues I have, primarily in these sort of defensive-related issues. But obviously, I know a lot of this was negative. I don't want you to kind of go away thinking I hate the game. I think it's good. I think overdress is a really, really good step up, almost across the board for Vanguard. Like, by and large, I cannot overstate how nice it feels to always do your deck's thing. Like, always. It's not, you're always going to do the thing you want to do. It's really consistent. It's really good. My only issues are things that are solvable, by and large, besides overtriggers, which I think are just a bad game mechanic. But I think Bushiroad is so invested in making them a thing that we're just going to have to deal with them. Making tournaments best 2 of 3 would go a really long way to alleviating this issue, by the way, because now, like, if your opponent just gets a lucky overtrigger, it's not that big a deal because there are 3 games. So 1, you've got a reasonable odds of getting lucky in one of the other games, and 2, it's not going to swing. It's, you know, unless it's 1-1, it's not going to swing the whole match. And in which case, you know, you got to accept some level of RNG at the end of the day. But I think with best 2 of 3, and if they can just start slowly adding defensive creep to the game, things look good. Like, overall, I would say, like, my experience playing Overdress was like a 7.5 out of 10. Pretty good. It was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. Certainly. So that's my thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found my perspective interesting. If you enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more Vanguard content, and of course Gate Ruler content. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys for tomorrow's video. Cheers.